Hello everybody. In this video I'm going to pick up from the last lesson that we had in which I introduced the Arduino microcontroller, and in this we're going to also look at the application example and application example 2 with the Arduino board. And so we are going to see what concepts we're going to look at. And really quickly, let me go through the application example. And so this is the example. We're going to do an SOS Morse code signaler. Okay. So what we're saying is that in this case, we're going to get the LED to signal the latest SOS, which is the International Morse Code Distress Signal. Now, Morse code is a type of character encoding that transmits letters and numbers using patterns of on and off. It is therefore nicely suited to our digital system, as we can turn an LED on and off in the necessary pattern to spell out a word or a series of characters. Now, in this case, we'll be signaling SOS, which is in Morse code alphabet, is simply 3 digits. Now, the 3 digits are actually short flashes, so followed by the 3 dots long flash, and then followed by the 3 digits again. So now, to really keep it simple, this is a program that we are trying to use to try to teach you guys how to use a for loop. Okay, and so before I go into the details, I'd like to really show you what the concept of what we're going to do, what it is all about. So let me just walk out of this screen and I get to a notepad, so that you have an idea of what we're talking about. So I'm just going to walk to Paint and try to draw something so that you have a picture of what it is all about. Now, so now here we are. Now we're in Paint. So what this program is going to do, we have an LED. So I'm just going to draw. Let me just draw this. This is a microcontroller, and so we're going to connect. We are connecting to this LED. We are connecting a light to this port. We are connecting a light emitting dot. So what this light emitting dot is going to do is that it's going to flash in 3 times. So it's going to flash so there's going to be the first flash, second flash, and the third flash. And then these are the 3 DITs. We call them the DITs, or the short flashes. And then afterwards, after the short flashes, it will have the longer flashes, right? That's what we want to capture, and it's going to do this 3 times, and it's going to do this also 3 times. The long flashes, or the dots, it's going to do it for 3 times. Okay, and then it's going to go back, repeat the cycle again, where we're going to flash for a short time. But so the concept here, and we're going to connect this to pin 10. So pin 10 will be caused to flash for these 3 times, the DITs, the short times, and then again we're going to have a long time. So the whole concept, the whole idea is to try to drive you guys to understand the concept of a for loop. And so before I go into this, I'd like to show you what the for loop is all about, which is the central idea behind this code. So real quickly, let me just go into a new, so that let's just try to explain what this for loop is all about. So now a for loop, so it's a for loop. A for loop is a way, this is a way we repeat a certain section of code a specific number of times. specific number of times. All right, now a specific number of times. Okay, so to do that, to repeat a certain section of code a specific number of times, we may use a for loop. Now, what is the structure of a for loop? So what is its structure? So the structure is basically giving us for, and then we have open and close curly brackets. Now what we put here in the round bracket is basically the condition for looping, right? So if we have here as a condition, and whatever you're going to place, the code that you're going to place in between the open and the close bracket will repeat a certain number of times based on the condition that we put in here, right? It's very interesting, right? And so, for example, what is it that we supply in the for loop in this condition? So in the condition section, we need to supply 3 parameters. What are these parameters? Well, you need to supply the initialization section, init, I'll call it, and then you need to supply what we call the condition itself. What is the condition? And the third part that you supply within that, you supply what we call the increment. All right, that is the increment. So when you put this code in this manner, you supply these parameters, then whatever is in these open and curly brackets, whatever code that you put here, can repeat a number of times provided you have supplied these conditions that you're supposed to put here. So let me just give you a sample example on how we do this. All right, so real quickly again, just want to show you a new screen. So this is how we do it. So in a for loop, I'm going just to, let's say for example that we want to switch on and off an LED 3 times. Of course, we'll switch it on the first time, and then on and off. The block of code that switches on and off an LED should be repeated 3 times. So this is how we can write the code. So we can say for, now don't worry about what I'm going to write, and I'll explain. I'll say int x is equal to 0. I'll comment that, and then we can say x is less than 3. And that's now semicolon, and then we supply x plus plus, and then we close brackets, and then say open and close brackets. So what we can do, we can write, let's say that we deal with pin 10, we can say digital write, let's say 10 high, then we can delay. Let's say we delay for 1 second, and then we say digital low, right, 10 low, and then we delay for 1 second again. So what this means basically is that this section of code right here, the section of code or the block of code will be repeated times 3. Okay, so now let's now try to explain what will make it repeat 3 times. So in other words, this one will run, for that will run, and then when it hits the end again, it will repeat again for the second time and run, and then it repeats again for the 3rd time, and then afterwards it means whatever is in the curly brackets after 3 times, it will loop out to perform the code that will be placed here. Now let's explain first of all the condition. So the way we do the looping is that we first need to initialize a variable, right? So how do we initialize a variable? Well, we say int x is equal to 0. So you initialize a variable to x equals 0, for example, right? And then what you say, you need to specify the condition of x less than 3. Now let's explain what this is all about. So first of all, we initialize the variable, x equals 0, and then we say that x should be less than 3, but then we need also to make sure, so what x is going to be doing, x is going to increase, it's going to be increasing from 0, but it should continue increasing until x is less than 3, right? So in other words, so let's just say that we have another option here, which is x plus plus. So in fact, the best way to explain all of this, guys, is to say that x is initialized as 0, and then x will be incrementing x by this function, and x should continue incrementing for as long as x is less than 3. But now let's explain. So when we have x is equal to 0, what happens with this statement of code here? This is what happens. So whenever the program reaches to run the for loop section, what it is going to do, it's going to initialize x at x equals 0. So for this 0 time, we're going to have our code run for that time, for the 0 portion. So in other words, x will run for 0. So we shall say x now equals 0. This code will repeat, will run for that number, right? And so what happens is that once the statement is run, whenever x is 0, what is going to happen is that now it will come back to this condition. The program will come back to this condition and check if 0 is less than 3. So if 0, so the first time, the first time x is equal to 0, it will be checked, is 0 less than 3? Yes, it is less than 3. So it will run for that 0 being less than 3. So it will run one time. So it will be like for 0 time, for the 0 number, it will run. And then the next time it's going to happen, it's going to loop back and it will add x plus 1, because this is the increment portion. So the increment portion says that x now, if x is equal to 0, so since it ran, it came back, so now it added itself to 0 plus 1. It incremented itself by 1. So it's now x equals what? 1. So again, so when it's now x equals 1, it checks again, is 1 less than 3? Yes, is less than 3. So it will run for one time, for that one that we have. So it will run, so say here again, it will run for number 1, right? Again, so now when it runs for that, so it's going to run for that time because 1 is less than 3. Then it comes back and it increments itself. So it increments itself where now x is equal to 1 plus 1. It's going to be 1 plus 1 is going to be what? Equal to 2. So it checks. So once it increments, it checks, is 2 less than 3? Yes, it's less than 3. So it will run again for this thing. It will run the for 2 time. Now when 2 comes back, 2 will add 1 to 2. So it will be now 2 plus 1, right? So now it checks, now is 3 less than 3? So it discovers that 3 is not less than 3. 3 is actually equal to 3. It's going to exit the code, right? So but then now what is going to happen, what you see, guys, is that it will run for this 0 for as long as x is less than 3 to run. When x was 0, it had to run. When x was incremented to 1, it had to run, and x was incremented to 2, it had to run. So when we look at all these 3 numbers, it had to run for 0, for 1, and for 2, for as long as these numbers that were being incremented were less than 3, it had to run. And these are 3 numbers, so this digital code right here was actually repeated 3 times. Okay, now let me just walk again. So the first thing the program does is to initialize x is equal to 0, and then it checks, is x less than 3? Yes, the 0 is less than 3, so it will run for that component, right? Now when it runs the statement and it reaches the end, it goes back and it increments x by 1. Now x is 1, so it checks, is 1 less than 3? Yes, it checks it's less than 3, so it adds it runs this code again. And then when it comes back again, it goes and x is incremented by 1. So now x go to 2. Is 2 less than 3? Yes, it is. So it runs this code again for the number 2. Now when 2 comes back, will also need to be added. So 2 is added plus 1. It check, is 3 less than 3? Yes, is 3 is not less than 3, but 3 is equal to 3. So the condition now is false. Because the condition is false, this block of code is done. It's not going to be run again, it's going to be skipped and another code. Now what you've done is that you've repeated x actually 3 times, right? So that's exactly how a for loop is actually used in this program, and this is exactly what we're doing. All right, so we have 3 digits here. We have the zeros, 0. So we need to repeat this code 3 times using a for loop times 3. And then we have got the 3 does, which we have to repeat times what? Times 3. And then we have got also the digits which will come back again to repeat itself. So we have 3. So we found a way using a for loop to repeat a section of code a number of times that we want. If you wanted to repeat for, let's say, 4 times, then you say x less than 4, then the whole code would run for 0, for 1, for 2, and actually for 3, right? And that is exactly 4 times. So real quickly, guys, let me just dive into the program itself and just walk you through the analysis, okay, that we have as pertains to the book. So now here, real quickly, I'm just gonna go into the view, and then I'll go into the full screen mode, and then I'll try to now just walk you through some of the setup. So this is the second setup in which we have actually pin number 10, right? Should be pin number, yeah, so this is pin number 10. Now you can see pin number 10 is connected to the LED. And then now what we're trying to say is that we're going to show you the written code. So now this is the written code that, of course, if you have to guys set up all of this in Proteus for your own simulation, if you need to have a quick hands-on on this, later on I'll be able to provide videos on how these things are practically implemented, and you can have a view of what this is all about. So what are the basic things, guys, that we're doing? So let's go first things next. Now if we look at the written code, what we've done is that we've declared a variable called lead pin, and we've given it a name, pin 10. So here all this is pretty much familiar stuff. So what we've done here, we've just given the code lead pin as an output pin, and now this is what I'm talking about. Now we've got the 3 digits, which are the short digits, and now what we're saying is that we specify the condition. We're saying for int x equals 0 and x less than this, we increase. And now notice that this is the period for which we want to repeat this codes for a short period of time. So we're saying digital write, lead pin is high, we switch on, and then we delay for 150 milliseconds, and then we switch off. Okay, this is where we switch off, and then we delay for 100 milliseconds. Now this whole section of code will actually repeat for 3 times, right? So now if it repeats for 3 times, then now once it exits, it's going to go to the delay function. So it will wait for 100 milliseconds before it changes to this for loop, where we are repeating for a long period of time. So you can see here we're switching on the same lead pin, and then we're saying it's 400 milliseconds, and then here we are also calling for 100 millisecond delay. So once this is actually repeated 3 times based on the what we've written inside it, so the LED will be on in this case for 400 milliseconds, then after 400 milliseconds it's off, and then it will stay 400 milliseconds before it repeats. So but then this whole section of code will be repeated 3 times. Now after the 3 times are done, we are going to go into the delay function. So the delay will be about 5 seconds, and then these 5 seconds, after 5 seconds, then the code will have to repeat again, will have to repeat itself into the, use that again on the for loop there. Remember that this whole function is within the void for loop, the void loop, and the end loop here. So we're writing everything here. By nature, we know that if we put anything within the loop, void loop, it will repeat itself. So once we put this delay before the code starts, it will repeat itself it will repeat itself a number of 3 times, and that is going to be done after 5 seconds. Now you can see here, guys, that if you come to the results, so these are the results that you get when you do the process, and then you can do this and write the code, guys. I'd like you to practice, write the code, go through it, try to understand, and then upload the hex file to the Arduino, right? And this is what we get in terms of results. And then you can see it will be blinking actually, so I'm just showing you that it just lit, but it's actually blinking for those short times, and then it starts blinking and stacking a bit. It becomes a bit slower. Okay, guys, I'd like to really thank you, but of course, before I go into the details, so you can see here in the code explanation, so the first part of the code is identical. We know what we're doing is that we initialize the variable and then set it to pin 10. We know this. And in the main code, we can see the same kind of statement, turn the LEDs on and off for a set of period, but this time the statements are within the 2 separate code blocks. So there's this code block, and there's another one that you've seen. So we're saying 2 separate code blocks. What are they? There's this code block, and there's also another code block. As you can see, there are 2 of them. Now we can see that the LED is turned on for 150 and then off for 100 million, and we can see that those statements are within a set of clear blocks and therefore in a separate code block. But when we run the sketch, we can see the light flashes 3 times, not just once. This is done using the for loop. So this is exactly, guys, what I was explaining, how the for loop works. Now, what are these basic statements that you have to find within the for loop? So the first thing is that this statement is what makes the code within its code block execute 3 times. So there are 3 parameters we need to give to the for loop. What are these parameters? These are the initialization, condition, and the increment, just exactly what I talked about. The initialization happens first and exactly once each time through the loop. The condition is actually tested. Initialization happens once, and then each time through the loop, the code is tested. If it is true, the statement block and the increment is executed. If it is true, then the condition is tested again. When the condition becomes false, the loop ends. All right. So the first, we need to initialize a variable to start the number of the loop. In this case, we set up a variable int x. We then set a condition to decide how many times the code in the loop will execute, how many times, so it will execute for as long as x is less than 3, right? So we initialize, then we set when, we then set a condition to decide how many times. So in this case, the code will loop for x is smaller than 3, so the code within a loop will always execute once, no matter what the condition set. So the symbol is what is known as a comparison operator. So we use a comparison. They are used to make decisions within your code and to compare 2 values. The symbols used are okay. So xx, this increments x by 1. So every time the loop takes place, every time the loop x is incremented by 1. In between each for loop, there is a small delay to make tiny visible pause between letters of it. So finally, the code waits for 5 seconds before the main program loop starts again from the beginning. All right. So now these are some of the comparison operators that you may find actually within the programming, and I want you guys to understand. You've seen us write less than, but we can also have like the equal to. Now I want you to remember this equal to. This does not assign a value. It's different from equal to 10, AINT LED pin equal to 10, but this one is equal, is a testing condition if something is equal, so you need to use to this. If it's not equal to something, then you use this testing condition. If it's less than, you use that testing condition. If it's greater than, you use that testing condition. And if it's less than or equal to, you use that condition, or if it's greater than or equal to, you use that condition. So these comparison operators are very, very handy in programming, and you're gonna see me also walk you through some examples where we apply each one of this, right? Now for now, guys, I'd like to end right here, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.